We're live.
Hey,
Live and
hey.
alive.
Yeah, that's that big 4-0.
It is. It's a big episode. A big one. I feel like I haven't really I was talking to you about this I guess before we started, but I just feel like my background has so much to be desired. I feel like I'm filming in like a it probably just looks like a warehouse right now. It's not very appealing. Even the shelf too. Like I could have like put a little bit more work into just organizing it,
No,
making it
the
look
sh
nicer.
the shelf look honestly, the shelf looks good.
It
The
just
table does not.
Yeah, that looks really bad. That but
It
even
got
that,
messier. The table got messier since last week.
yeah, I think it did. Well, I got these little bins for I'm still trying to figure out how I want to sort things cuz I got these bins for like plates and things. Like whenever like I'm eating in here, I use glasses. I'm putting them in a container so I have them stacked. Clean one is on the bottom for when they're finished and washed. Dirty ones go in the top one. So I'm getting organization down. I'm trying to be clean, have a good
But
system.
if you wanna get to the clean ones, you have to lift up a bin to get to them?
Well, no, because there's nothing in them right now. Because when I wash them, I bring them back in, I dry them, and then I put them back where they need to go. So now it's in like dirty mode, where I haven't brought everything in yet, so there's nothing dirty in there yet.
Oh, right, 'cause you don't have a sink.
Yeah, I just have the bathroom sink, and that's so small
Gotcha.
that I bring them into the main kitchen, and I
Yeah, yeah,
still
yeah.
use I don't have I have like an air fryer and like a little like hot kettle for hot water and stuff in here, but I don't actually have a stove or a microwave, so I just go into the main kitchen to use that stuff.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I like that. I like that, the shelf. I like the color of the shelf.
Well, I do too. The only problem that I have with it is that it looks well, actually up close it looks good. But on camera, I feel like that looks bad. It just looks unorganized, like with the book behind it. It doesn't look very good right now. I need to change some things around. Right now
You
I'm just storing stuff inside of those things. Like cups are in one of them. I've got
you just look like a regular guy, dude.
no, it looks like I'm living in a warehouse, but I like did something nice on the top of it, and then everything else is just storage. I got to do something about that. I gotta.
Yeah, it doesn't really look like a warehouse, especially with the sunlight in there. It just looks like, yeah, you just need something on the walls.
Yeah, that definitely is a big part of it. Maybe that's why it doesn't look very homey. That's a major contributor. I think it's even just the angle of the camera. Like I want to like that's just gonna be a kitchen area for like a while once I clear it off and But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like it either needs to be. Here's my opinion. This may be kind of crazy, but I think it either needs to look scuffed enough to where it's funny. You know what I mean? Like I need to be living in basically a shack, or it needs to look somewhat nice. Like there's just no in between. Like this is like some kind of like in between transition.
Uh-huh.
Unacceptable. That's what I think at least.
I agree. You could just go put like your guitar stand over like in front of the door, like that's on camera. Just put something over there that's like just when you're in podcast mode, like it's like a little set piece.
Oh, I could. Yeah. I wouldn't be able to use the bathroom then. Then it would look kind of weird when if I have to get up in the middle of the show, I got to run
No,
and
just
use
put
the
it right in front of
bathroom.
that table. Just put it in front of the table, the outside door.
Oh yeah. I guess that would work. I'm kind of blocking the door though.
Well, like look where your shoulder is, like right there, like broom is.
Ah,
Were you to put a guitar on the front side of the table where the broom is?
I like that idea. Yeah. And maybe get rid of the broom altogether. It kind of looks like I'm in like a cleaning pantry. Like there's really no like
Dude, it
there's
just
no hiding
looks
it.
like you're living. It just looks like you're living in a frat house more than anything else.
You know what? Actually, yeah, yeah. That's a nicer way of putting it. You're right. Yeah, it's not done yet. It's gonna get better, but right now it's just it's still in a transition phase. Is how I'd put it. But I don't think a frat house is really a place for a podcast, or maybe it is a bad kind of podcast, like a really terrible one. You know.
Yeah, I'm sure there's good podcasts everywhere.
I feel like though it would be a frat house podcast. They'd be trying to be like Logan Paul esque, just like one of those guys, and then it would just fail miserably, and they'd end up actually like killing one of their friends. I think that's what that kind of a show would lead to.
Yeah, yeah, not a lot of high quality content, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But I think that's where like the Nelka Boys started, was that kind of vibe.
Did they kill? I mean, we don't know. Obviously, maybe they killed one of their friends.
I don't know what they did. I'm just saying that it's probably bad, and then they started getting some money.
Yeah. Plus, I mean, then we'd have to like we definitely have to start like giving political takes, even though we don't know anything about maybe the subject. I mean, and I'm not saying that like if someone offered me maybe like $1 million, I could make up like a theory.
Yeah, yeah. No, you should
Like,
make up
what
a
if
theory.
I told people that trees were gay? I don't know. Would people believe me? And that we need to like I don't know. I haven't gotten paid yet, so you know what? I'm not gonna say anything until the money starts coming in. I think is how
Yeah,
I'm gonna play it.
yeah, yeah. And then we like, if Elon Musk wanted to come on this podcast, I think we would do it.
Oh yeah, we'd have to.
Yeah, so
How much? I mean, how much is I guess we could get some good sponsors. Probably some really weird like. Maybe we could get what are those things, like those buckets that people buy for like survival, that like those weird I'm thinking we could get a sponsor like that. I wouldn't want to eat
if
it
we
on
had
camera, but I don't think
if
any of the people who sell it do. They they
if
pretend.
Elon Musk was on our podcast, you're saying we could get some sponsors?
Yeah, yeah, they just might not be like, traditional sponsors. They might be yeah, survival bucket, or maybe some like we might be selling some vitamins that have God knows what in it, but we'll say that it makes like, yeah, I don't know, people's dicks bigger. Let's probably get something like that.
Well, we could sell some like athletic greens, or uh I think there's plenty of sponsors that are okay with that guy.
Maybe some. I mean, it depends on like, what the topics are. If we start talking about, certain things, all of a sudden we're going to be selling some weird products. And look, if they're willing to pay, I mean, I'm not going to eat them, I don't want whatever negative side effects come with that. I'll I'd be I'll be fine, you know. Just pretending.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now it's bad cuz I feel like now we've just, maybe pissed some of those guys off. Like the survival bucket. How are we going to get that in the future now? I feel like maybe I've just ruined it for us. They'll never give us any sponsorship now cuz I won't eat
Yeah.
it.
I'm not eating it.
Yeah, see? I mean, the reason why we won't eat the survival bucket is not because we don't know what's in it and it's probably disgusting. It's because it's meant for survival purposes. And that would be unprofessional.
Yeah, because we're just realists
Exactly.
and we don't do anything that's not by the book.
Yeah, and imagine if the world ends and then what do you think I'm going to like talk to like a bunch of zombies outside and tell them, "Oh, sorry. I ate this bucket because of a sponsor. So now I have to go outside. I'm dead at that point, you know? Should have stayed
Hmm.
inside, should have saved the food." Um and that's why this show is truly a show that you should watch if you want to survive the apocalypse and pick up women, you know? That's yeah.
Most most definitely.
I like the bandana you got there. Is that a do-rag?
No, it's just a bandana.
Nice. What's it
Thanks.
got on there?
I think just some designs.
Okay. I thought those were like little I don't know, little spaceships at first that were on there.
Yeah, they could be. They could be spaceships. Yeah.
What's like the design? What's like in detail? What is it? Is it just little circles with lines through it?
Dude, I don't know. I'm
You don't know?
not gonna take it off.
Okay,
Look.
fair. Yeah.
I don't know. It's just what it looks like from a distance, dude. Yeah.
Interesting.
I don't know. Yeah. Dude, I think the Epstein files might come out.
I don't know. Maybe.
I think they might.
Possibly with some redactions. I mean,
Maybe one major one, but
yeah.
besides
Yeah.
that,
Or maybe a few of them, you know, just like oh, they all seem to be friends.
the redactions.
Yeah, yeah. You'll have one major redaction and then you might have a few that follow.
I think we'll just get the list, and the ones that were taken off were not like crossed out. Like you wouldn't know they were crossed out.
Yeah, yeah. A few pages missing here and there.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I think we're gonna get some of it.
We might. We very well might. Or it'll be a distraction game, kind of like, you know, where someone's like, "Oh, well I was gonna, but we have to wait or something." And then it will, you know, 4 years will go
Eh,
by and it just won't
Well,
nothing will
yeah,
happen.
that's what happened with the JFK files initially.
Yeah. I have a feeling it's going to happen again, or like there'll be like another little piece that will be released and people will read and they'll be like, "There's nothing in here." Like this we knew like half of this information. I guess like now we know that there's this guy named John who saw it happen, but I guess we don't even have his last name, so I don't know. And then people are going to forget. I think that's what's going to happen. That if I had to bet, I think that's going to be the thing.
I just want bad people to not have power anymore.
I think we're far from it. I think it's going to maybe one day, you know, the optimist in me says, you know, maybe one day we'll be able to make things better. But I think we're
Well,
going
I
to get
mean,
it for a little while.
so there's a list and potentially video of these people doing bad things,
Yeah. Even
right?
then, that's a fraction of a bunch of other terrible people, you know? It's a step closer though, but I have a feeling that something's going to get in the way and they're going to be like, "Oh, here's the part that we're releasing," and it's going to have like just not much information in it.
Yeah, I disagree.
All right.
Yeah. And maybe it's not that specifically that thing happening, the files. But yeah,
I don't know.
celebrating 250th anniversary of the country. We have lots of conscientious people in the world who are brilliant. And yeah, there's a lot of good opportunities for us.
Possibly. I don't know. It really depends. I'm not saying there's like, not smart people out there, people who want to do the right thing, but as it stands, I think we're just gonna get I think we're gonna get a whole another few years of nothing, just like it's always been, you know.
Well, then it's not nothing.
I mean, I guess nothing in terms of like good good progression, you know.
So you really think that you can predict the future?
I
You
can
really
I can
think that?
only like
You really wait though. But you really think that?
that I can predict the future. I mean, not with
Yeah.
100% accuracy. I can like make a prediction because a prediction isn't like, bound to be 100% true. I can only say like, what I think's going to happen, but
But
not
you
with like
really
any
think
degree of certainty. Otherwise, I'd be like a fortune teller.
but you think that you know what's gonna happen in the future?
I think I can predict it, you know. I don't think I
That's so
know, but
interesting. That's so interesting, dude.
I mean anyone can make a prediction. All you got to do is like be like,
I
"Okay,
know, I know, but I mean, you believe that your prediction has any merit?
I think that there's a chance of my prediction coming true, you know? Just like with anybody's prediction. I could say that I think that statistically mine might have a higher chance of coming true than another prediction. I could say that, but it's just a
Well, like,
prediction, you know?
What's the point of having such a sad prediction? Like, what's the purpose of it?
I guess it's just my own like my own belief, I suppose, you know? Just based off of what I've seen, based off of like precedent or what I know to be true. That would be my prediction, you know? It's just like I could lie and
Do
I
you
could
think?
say I think things are going to be like things aren't going to be that bad or things are going to be better. But if I don't believe, that to be true, then
Yeah,
I'd just be lying.
there's like this there's like this story about these people all over the world. I don't know why they're doing this, but they have like these glass jars, and they're kind of like writing down like how their day is going. And there's a guy who like just got um married, let's say, and he's happy that day. Things are going great. He writes down on jar like life is amazing and beautiful. It's so special. Puts in the jar, and let's say that the jar gets buried in the dirt for hundreds of years. On that very same day, somebody like had been living on the streets for 10 years, and like they got a serious infection on their leg. They're going to have to like amputate their leg. And that person that day like writes down like life is shit. I hate this. And it goes in the jar and it goes into the dirt. There's various different ones. People are um like let's say somebody's taking acid on that day and they write down on this thing and it's actually gibberish, or like the handwriting's kind of weird and odd, right? Goes in the jar and goes in the dirt. And let's say an anthropologist or whoever digs up that shit, they find all these jars throughout the earth, and there's like a bunch of different jars and there's a bunch of different takes. And then it's like, what really happened here? Is there like one thing that was happening, or was there all these individual experiences? And what sort of agency do people have over these experiences? Because there is no one thing that's happening. Like it's so like language is by definition reductive. And so like by saying good things are going to be happening or bad things are going to be happening as a blanket statement is like, to me, is kind of like absurd. It's kind of like absurd to be uh making those kind of
I mean, I feel like
statements.
making predictions or like assuming something is pretty natural, you know? Like it's just like everyone has the ability to think of what might occur in the future. Sometimes you make a prediction, and those predictions are just based off of, to a certain degree, your own like experience or what you've seen in the world, what you've learned. And just naturally you'll just think like, if someone's like, oh, do you think, like, especially if someone asks you and says, what do you think's going to happen, you only can give the best prediction that you think is going to be true. Even with those notes, an anthropologist finds this notes and a bunch of different people's experiences written on them. Even he would probably admit he can't know the degree of like how society is operating just based off of this jar of notes, but he could read through all of them and get a general consensus of like a collective how people are doing to some degree. Especially, I mean, imagine, let's say 90% of the notes in that jar um, were a similar experience on some level. Whether it was they were upset with how things were going, maybe it was a famine. And maybe then the anthropologist could say, well, to some degree, in this part of the country or whatever thing it is back then, when people wrote down these notes, they could say, oh, well, a famine must have happened here. Everyone's saying they're hungry. Someone said that, like, this someone died of starvation in their family. Life seemed like it kind of sucked in this area and to this degree of the, population. But you can only make assumptions. Even then, they'd need more
Yeah, because you
information.
don't know, because you don't know what happened, and it depends on what sort of things people chose to write down, and um, yeah, I think ultimately the idea is everybody has their unique individual experience that is constantly changing, and to, I mean, I guess so. There's all these unique individuals' experiences, and then there's the people having them, right? And some people have hardship occur in their life and it knocks them down and it's very troubling for them. And some people are incredibly resilient and it just like, what do they say? Something water off the back of a duck or something. I don't know what they say, but it's just not even a big deal. Like shit happens, like someone steals their car, right? It sucks. And then like a couple days later, they're like, whatever, like can't do anything about that. Like there's different responses to like life circumstances and like there's all these sorts of experiences. And so I'm curious, like, what kind of agency we have over what sort of note we're writing down into our little glass jar, and hearing we're going to have a bland experience for a few years is like, I mean, what kind of glass jar is that, you know?
I mean, I don't know. I guess I just I'm not in a um I guess I personally don't believe that it's going to be better. So, I mean, I could lie, but instead I would say my honest prediction is that, I don't think it's going to be great. That's just like my honest prediction. If I was to say otherwise, I'd just be lying, I guess, So it's difficult cuz I mean, you can talk about like changing perspective, but at the same time, if I don't think that, something's going to be good, I'm not going to like, lie about it. I'm just going to be blunt and say
Yeah,
I think
but
it
I
might
guess
not be
the thing
great.
is, I didn't ask you what do you think is going to happen the next few years, and so then it's like, um, yeah, I didn't ask that. I think I just asked. I just had mentioned, hey, maybe I think we're going to get the Epstein files, and then I spoke of my optimism. I believe I don't remember exactly how it went down, but um, yeah, I mean, you put stuff out there. Maybe some random person listens to this, or just the way that influences me. Like it's it's Yeah, it's a wild world and people are like talking so negatively. It's like, wow, this is honestly kind of shocking to me. It's basically like the
I think that's
world has
normal though.
ended. We're fucked kind of conversations that I'm hearing. It's like, wow, you do we really?
I think that's normal. I'd
Really?
say that's fairly normal for people to be upset. You know, especially I mean, I don't know. If in relation I guess to like the election, if that's like what we're mainly talking about here, is that shift. I think it's pretty normal for people to be upset, especially if they're one of the people who is like in a position to be harmed from something, right? I
Yeah,
wouldn't expect that person to like just like be like it's chill. That person is going to be obviously panicked, and to varying degrees to how much it's going to affect that person. And I guess like then even somebody who isn't in the direct line of fire, just through pure empathy, right? And not wanting to see stuff like that happen. And even just the mere threat of it happening. Let's say someone could say, well, maybe that won't happen. Maybe the person ran on this or ran on that, and they're not going to enact those things for some reason. Someone still is going to think in their head, well, that person said that. Why am I supposed to, like, think that they're not going to honor it? Words mean something. Sometimes people lie. Sometimes people don't do the thing that they say they're going to do. But at the end of the day, people are going to say, well, that's probably going to happen. And that's just going to happen until, the realization that it doesn't happen or it does happen occurs. And I think like, it's just natural. That's a human reaction.
yeah. I guess just where I'm coming from is like the 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 thing is the whole thing is so outrageously corrupt that like what do like what? Like how is it such life altering news that this one situation is going to be occurring for this period of time when it's like damn like this this is really fucked up like there's there's bad people in the government. They're nefarious people. They're doing horrible things to minors. They're it's criminal what's occurring, right? And so it's like this is bad, and also this is this is life. This is modern times. This is very privileged existence for this country, and this is very new. This is very new, and we're very privileged to even say, hey, we have these liberties to make these decisions and to have this sort of like may it be like pseudo democracy. Like this is incredible to be like, hey, we want equal rights for all people. We want everybody to be successful. Like that doesn't read through the history books. uh, where else are we finding that? So like, hey, we're arguing over like some very very high level topics right now, and like it I get it, but like there's not like genocides happening in this country. No, like we're working on something cool and like unprecedented. Like let's get some perspective here.
I think like it's difficult because definitely this is not the worst place to live in the world. I think there is like an idea of like American exceptionalism where we think that like we are the only ones who have certain things. You know, other countries have, I mean, we might have been one of the first people to pave the way as far as separating from a monarchy. Historically, I mean, there were other like countries that practiced democracy, even ancient Greece. There were like governments that actually had like some democratic mechanisms built in. But I mean,
Yeah, but women
there's a
women couldn't participate, dude. And I'm not sure if they had slaves or not then, but like
yeah,
it's
even at the
it's
founding of this
pretty
country, we had slaves. Women couldn't vote. In the beginning,
But I'm talking about
actually,
where we
we
are right now and being disappointed about like what has occurred is this is a very high concept society. Like we're doing pretty good.
yeah, we've come a long way. I mean,
It's high concept, dude.
I think there's like, yeah, there's still a lot of problems, but I think like we
But
also do a
relative to
lot of
the
net
history of
harm.
all humans, dude, like however many hundreds of thousands of years, like, all right, can we get some perspective on this? Like, this is pretty wild, like where we're at here. We made a rule you can't own another person,
But
right?
we can't ignore the stuff that like it shifts over time. So like there's different like damages that we output over time. Like, you know, we've gone beyond slavery. Definitely that's a great checkpoint. At least we've
Dude, there was
overcome
two
that.
times when a woman could be president. I mean, where are the women rulers in all these places? You know, like
I mean, other countries have had like, you know, women presidents, prime ministers for a long time. But I guess like I guess sure, like the fact that like we're moving in a direction is sure someone could say is positive, but at the same time, there's a lot of negative outputs, and those negative outputs shift over time, right? Like we were doing bad things back in the day domestically, one could say, quite a lot. Not that we don't still do that today, but I guess one could say that the negative output domestically that we were forcing upon parts of the population was much worse back in the foundation of the country, right? Someone could say that those haven't necessarily gone away. They've just evolved and shifted over time. And perhaps those outputs, someone could say, is a negative net output that is less than it was. But when you look at globally, I mean, let's say, again, just and going off of historical examples, we kill off a leader of another country, right? We shift the whole entire political landscape. Millions of people die. We're looking at supporting genocide, supporting wars, doing wars in other countries with no direct meanings. Plenty of people from our country die. Plenty of people from their country die. Innocent civilians. That's a massive net negative output. So I think the thing is that I don't think they're really comparable. You can say that, like, you know, I think it's just all bad things. And the idea is to, like, you know, hopefully eventually stop those negative outputs from occurring.
yeah, yeah, for sure. I just think my bold take is that America is pretty good. I mean, like, dude, it is it is crazy that people have a voice. It's crazy that like we're having discourse about very, very fundamental structures of reality. Like dude, existence is so wild. Okay? It's crazy. You just pop into this place, you have this weird period where you're like rapidly growing and like assimilating to the modern culture, and then you become an adult with some level of autonomy, right? It's crazy, okay? And so thinking about coming up with a system of governments that allows for like people to be doing what they want, but also to like create unity and safety in the large population, right? And in a lot of other places, it's just you're born in this place, you have your people, depending on what's the political landscape, you might have to fight other people, try to steal their shit. You might like join forces with some people and like team up and stuff like, and all throughout that time, dude, women are getting raped, they're getting demeaned, like they are like low status. It's like th- this this is great. We're making progress, okay? So just we're trying, okay? This is a wild thing that's going on, okay? It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it is a
Okay?
it's
Let's
a crazy world. I would say that
it's
it depends
it's
on how
wild, okay?
it depends on how you like how someone's like we can say that we're fortunate, but it depends on like if we use that feeling of being fortunate to be in a certain place to just forget about any of the negative outputs, some that might even come from that feeling of just being fortunate, then there becomes the problem, the disconnect, you know? If a bunch of people just like sit in silence and forget about
No,
all
no,
the
but it's
negatives.
no, but it's rejoicing in the possibility of a future is way different than being pessimistic about the negative outputs. Like it's like, okay, we're generating the future. Oh, here's this. It's just information. And then there's, dude, the dichotomy that's created, the as I've said several times before, the Christian belief and fragmentation of reality into a good and a bad just runs havoc in people's psyche. Like it's that's not the way that it works. That there's like heaven and hell type actions. It's like it's to me, it's reality and then creativity. Those are the two aspects of life, right? So here's these outputs occurring. Hey, this is stuff we don't like. But don't like doesn't mean the same as this is inherently bad and I'm going to actually feel bad physically because of this. We're these creative beings, dude. We're crazy. Like we can like think about something and then make it. Okay? So if you think about it, it's just like this creative sandbox and there's this thing like you're like supporting genocides or like you're getting engaged in these different wars and stuff. It's like, oh, that's so interesting that I got placed into this reality to the where were I to choose, and it is, I believe it is a choice, were I to choose to want to engage in acknowledging and potentially affecting this aspect of reality, that I may have that opportunity. And it's also great that I can acknowledge it and recognize that, hey, my real path in life is just to be a concert cellist, and bring joy into the world that way. Right? It's just like an unlimited sandbox of creativity.
But see, I would say there's something even beautiful to be said about emotion, in the fact of like rage. And actually, there's a there's some even scholars that have talked about like the role of emotions in politics. A lot of things wouldn't get done if there weren't people who were visibly angry, sad, terrified. A lot of these emotions go into even sometimes a political rally that can shake the fear into the political foundations that forces change through. I think like it's easy to say that, for someone to not be upset about something or to like feel a certain way about something in a different manner. But ultimately when you look at, I mean, just how like how something that is trauma is relative to each and every individual person, or what scares somebody, the idea, even just like when someone says something and says they're going to do something, or someone says they're going to physically harm you in some capacity, right? There's real fear that comes with that. And it's going to be different depending on who's being targeted or who feels like they're in the hot spot, right? And this can
Mm-hmm.
be um, applied across a multitude of different scenarios, even historically. But when we look at, political movements, a lot of them that have shaped the world that we live in, we could be living in a very, negative space if it wasn't for forms of rage, forms of sometimes, even what you're talking about, restraint, perhaps, but multitudes of different forms of political activism that come together to create the world that we live in. And it comes in many different flavors and many different types. But ultimately, I think sometimes those emotions may be necessary, but I also think they might be natural in many
Yeah, no.
instances.
Emotions are natural and they might guide you towards what is meaningful for you in this life. And they also might be representation of a certain belief system that you have adopted based on all your cultural upbringings. Some of them, which is propaganda, right? Is just straight up bullshit, like the food pyramid and stuff, right? it might be letting you know that, hey, I might have a belief system that's not supporting me and being healthy in my own life. I believe that like political activism can be based on very, very strong and core emotions. And that's great. People, if the people like doing that, that's awesome. I think ultimately what happens if there's like this anarchist, like revolutionist movement can be coming from these emotions. And I think that it might be important to recognize that like the underlying belief of this is good, this is bad, when it's applied to the lens of political activism, when let's say a revolution succeeds, now they're still on that dichotomy of good and bad. And when you have succeeded, then you have perpetuated, I believe, a belief system that has created um the unlivable circumstances for a lot of people. Like, because you think things are bad and because you think things are good makes you set up a system of governance that is more likely to be able to manipulate people and have people have a negative life experience.
But see, I think the source of that, it could be explored in a certain number of ways, because classification is like classifying things as good or bad can also be, I think, a natural response, especially if you see something that's a net negative, right? Something that is actually inputting something that can't be described in any sort of positive way. What else do
Yeah.
you call it other than bad? That would be a bad thing. And people would,
No, no, no.
then be
So
upset
that's the
and
thing.
wish to.
It's so ingrained in the Western culture. It's literally Christianity. It's literally heaven and hell bifurcated into the modern population. We were just talking about this. We're talking about Christmas and how Christmas is for everyone, but you got Jesus and you got the manger and all this stuff. It's like it's still the Christianity is still in there heavily. And now instead of heaven and hell and making like these existential choices about good and bad, it's been shrunken down to like life choices and things culturally and societally. And the way that I might start thinking about it is it more alive or is it more dead? You know, like the way the Chinese think about it isn't about good or bad, it's about alive and dead. And things that are stuck and not moving are very, very close to death. And that's what we might see in a lot of these cases where it's like, this is a very, as you labeled it, negative output. It might just be like an output nearing death. Like these systems can't continue when they are so stuck like that and creating so much negative output. I mean, that's why these revolutions happen, is because these systems can't sustain themselves unless they're like actually uh creating experiences for humans that humans want to experience.
Well, yeah, I think that like
Is it
the
more life
premise
or is
of
it
good
more
and
death?
bad, though, still like it may change across cultures, but there's still the notion of like something being not good or not good for the people. I mean, it's why you see like frameworks of like, without the framework of like, um this
More
is a
alive and more dead
harmful
will work.
admin.
More alive or more dead would be so much
And see, that does
clearer.
work for that too. More, so even if someone like has the framework of more dead or like the bottom barrel, right? When it comes to like I mean, even if you want to shift it to maybe the Chinese perspective during the Marxist revolution over there, the imperialist government at the time, they obviously at that point thought this is a no good government. People are living in poverty, and so they thought at the time a revolution would be the best thing. There's no like,
This is
there
like
would be
ancient
no
Chinese thought, by the way. This is like,
ancient Chinese thought. Well, even
yeah,
like
yeah.
as because at that time, like it would be hard to say that like you can place like even like Christian values into even that time period. Colonialism didn't even happen in China, mainland China at least. It did on some of the ports where you had the British occupying Hong Kong and other regions. But ultimately, we can look at other areas and we can see a commonality that there's there's still something that causes a
Wait,
similar emotional response when
where's the
something.
good and the bad you're seeing represented though?
Well,
In
for instance, if let's say the government comes and kills like your family, that is something that is sad. Everyone agrees upon that. That's something that is a
Sure.
universally felt emotion. Anger. You could feel hatred. You'd say, I hate that government. I hate that person. I hate that group or whatever. There's a natural response that comes from that. And maybe
Yeah.
it's not described as bad, but I mean the classification is still negative regardless. That emotion is still the same.
No, no,
And maybe
no.
it
Okay, the emotion is not the same, but it's like here's a life here, and then here's this secondary experience and uh understanding of events that is like it's like a labeling, right? We're we're creating a container for our experience, right? And the Christian container is going to put thumbs up or thumbs down on all these things. I believe the ancient Chinese perspective is sadness and anger and grief aren't bad. It's not it's not something that shouldn't be happening. This is like a natural thing that's happening. It's the way that nature intended it. Like there are these experiences, you have these emotions. It allows you to grow from experiences. Like having feelings is informative to you as a being, understanding life better. It's like part of life that's happening.
I see. I think it depends on like, because I guess I get what you mean on like a level of like classification, but I also think at the same time, if you look at like, I don't know if it would be interesting actually to talk to other people in the world and see their perspective on what good and bad is, or not even good and bad, whatever it is that they're classifying it as. I don't know though if somebody consistently outside of like western countries, I don't know if consistently you'd find people who had said, oh yeah, this thing just happened. They might say similarly, I feel like this might be a human based emotion, I guess is what I'm saying. Across the globe, if you find people who say this never should have happened, and now I'm going to actively push for change because this thing happened. If that might just be a natural
No, 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 it
human
is. It is.
evolution
No,
across.
the emotions make you act differently. I'm telling you, it's a very subtle thing I'm trying to explain. It is extremely natural to experience emotions. Emotions cause you to have different thoughts and different actions in life. The only thing I'm talking about is having this label that it's a bad or a good thing, which seems to like permeate beyond like the um temporal nature of the emotional experience. The emotion lasts for as long as it lasts. But then if you have the sustaining label of bad, it allows the emotion to continually access your body and your physical experience of life, and that has a more of a skew towards more dead sort of experience.
Are we sure
That's just the
though?
way it works.
I guess this is ultimately what I'm trying to ask. Are we sure that's just a Western value thing? Because I don't know if that's necessarily true. I mean, if we look at how even how different groups are portrayed, even in other countries, sure the if we're going to talk about, every country has some form of propaganda in terms of reinforcing certain political messages, but there are commonalities certainly with some of them, how different people are portrayed, even how like maybe a fascist government would use a certain group as an scapegoat. um so I don't know. I don't know if that's necessarily just a Western um value.
I think because of the materialist nature of the Western thinking, it it precludes itself to be more, I mean, object based clearly, but it to be more of a static view of life's experiences. There are unlimited different ways to view life's experiences. Okay. And in the Western world, things are reduced to numbers and digits and physical objects. So if we're looking at the spectrum of the space time continuum, we in a Western culture are standing. This is kind of a hard thing to explain. We are standing in time looking at space and objects. Like we're very focused on this is this microphone and it has like this special cage over it. And I am 168 pounds. And like this is how we do healthcare in this war in this belief system is we are this machine. And if a part of the machine isn't working, we're gonna cut it out and put a new one in. It's very object based. So when we translate that to thinking about events and how that might affect us emotionally is we think about an event potentially in the past that occurred, and because we're not really in tune with the time spectrum as much, we're thinking about objects, right? An event that occurred in the past becomes an object in like our minds, and therefore that object can continue to be uh felt repeatedly. Like there's a major epidemic of depression and anxiety in this country, and I believe that's exactly what I'm talking about is past events that we haven't processed emotionally, and they're like recurring and having negative effects in our body. When it comes to a more eastern view of the world, it is thinking about ourselves as in tune with nature. And what's special about nature is nature occurs in cycles. It happens over time. There's predictable patterns of movement that occur over the spectrum of time. So the Eastern thought is more so as, hey, I am an object. Say like there's space time continuum. They're more in the space. They are a the object, but they are observing life's experiences and perceiving life through the experiences of life. Being that when it turns from winter to spring, the whole life changes, and also the internal experience emotionally changes for people. So I believe that having a view of life through the lens of time itself allows you to be um allows you to let go of things a lot more. They have a different relationship with death. They have the lens, I believe, is more life or more dead, and I believe that that can help people have um an incredibly different lens of what's occurring and how they process life's events. Like I think it's drastically differently. Like the core emotions might be the same, but like we're we're not seeing the world the same.
I mean, it's very possible. I mean, I think that's true in a lot of cases. I mean, if you look at any different part of the world, there's going to be cultural differences and ways that things are viewed differently. But there's also going to be the great commonalities of the human experience and just things that are shared. I don't know. I think like I don't know if I would say if there's a right or wrong way to process things. I would say it might be hard to get somebody to experience things differently who have experienced something that way their whole life. I don't know if there'd be ever a moment where everyone would be able to agreeingly shift towards a different perspective. I'm sure there's a lot of people who might. I don't know though. I don't know if there's like you could fix perhaps a lot of problems with it. I mean, going back to I think like your core example of how I guess good or bad could be used in a propaganda sense. Somebody being highlighted as the enemy or someone being highlighted as the hero. and using that perspective against people, I suppose, and against what is truly happening in reality. But every country does that too in propaganda. I mean, that's a known tactic everywhere, is to paint somebody as the hero, somebody as the enemy. That good bad spectrum occurs, I mean, from Russia to China to, the Middle East
Yeah,
all the way
but
to the
like
Americas. It
it's
just is.
it's so hard. It's so hard to talk about because just because they're doing propaganda, the way that they are processing the experience is the same. There can be the presentation of somebody that you don't like and you're defaming them. It doesn't mean that they are inherently bad in any way or like representing like evil as like an existential idea. It just means there's this person and we don't want them to have any power in the world. We're going to defame them. It's it's just what there is, and then what are we going to do about it?
But those things are still used, though. Like the notion of evil is still used across multiple different cultures, is what I'm saying. That's why genocides occur everywhere on the planet. There is a commonality within all human beings where there is believed to be, not that evil would be the classification, but that there'd be somebody who would be worthy of death. That there would be somebody who is so terrible that the atrocities that occur do not matter. This is something that's like is baked into, I mean, just for some reason, the human psyche, and it's exploited across so many different countries. I mean, it's why even I would say like fascist tendencies are not just a cultural phenomenon, but a global phenomenon. I mean, it happens everywhere. I don't know what that
Yeah,
is
no,
though.
it's the so it's just like I've I've talked to people who have had like experiences in their life through various different means, just like going to therapy or like talking with like a spiritual teacher or doing some sort of like psychic journey or doing mushrooms or ayahuasca or something, right? Like there is tons of different ways for you to have a different experience of life, right? Through changing your perspective. We mentioned this earlier. When these extreme shifts in you understanding or consciousness, you could call it, when they occur, it doesn't necessarily change the way the person acts very much as a necessity. It may change them drastically. But just because we see the same sort of actions being taken in a lot of different places doesn't mean that the internal that the intent is the same. It just means that the action is the same. And what I'm trying to point out is that maybe the Chinese culture isn't doing what I'm saying. But what I am hinting at is you can have a different experience of life. And I am suggesting in a strong way that relying on the good and the bad spectrum, I mean, it's not a spectrum. The binary is is not effective and has a negative impact on your emotional health. And having a perspective that is focused on the sandbox mode, which relies heavily on creativity, which is something like we naturally have as human beings. Like creativity is life. Like life is creation and that flows through us, right? And having the good and the bad binary, basically like do these things and you'll go to heaven, do these things and you'll be eternally in hell. That shit stifles creativity. It makes it seem like things are concretized in a way that your life can be predicted. It's basically like you're buying the next life or the afterlife with your life's actions today in this life. It's it's foregoing creativity by buying into like the future as an idea that has already been created. The future has not been created. The future, the way the future works is it's constantly being generated. It's like nothing nothing besides what's happening right now and what we're thinking and what we're investing in is going to be occurring in the future, right? I think good and bad allows you to like think either forward in heaven, like we had said, like it's like we're thinking about heaven and hell, but the way that it's permeated Western culture, people who have Christian heritages and peoples, that heaven and hell has now coming out of the metaphysical world, and it's just become do these specific actions to feel good as a person. And I believe do these specific actions just it's like a it's like a vacuum cleaner for creativity basically. It's basically like your map is your not life is mapped out for you now. It's like do this. It's like, oh, this is good, this is bad, you got to do this. And when you got to do this, then where's your creativity? This is what you got to do.
Yeah, I would say it depends, because I think this can, like, of course there's going to be those values that are just definitely present within a culture, right? Cultures adapt and evolve over time and change. And of course, some of those things are going to linger. It's kind of like a massive, I guess, melting pot of different ideas that have just accumulated over time. And a lot of them are harmful sometimes. You got some positives, some harmful things that I think can collect probably and just stew. Um, I think that probably happens anywhere. I mean, there's even components of religion that can be, I guess, beneficial to some people, some components that cause, I mean, net harms. I mean, look at all the deaths that you can attribute to religious wars and the like. But I think it depends. I don't know if it's so, like, constant, as if you could, like, measure it consistently across the population as a whole. Um, I think there might be a lot more possible individuality in terms of perspective, and perhaps I think no matter what, those are going to linger in everybody, but I think to varying degrees. And I think that's where you might get somebody who ranges from maybe having a full of good and bad, just like you described. Maybe they're religious, maybe they're not religious. To, the other side of the spectrum of somebody who views things maybe more fluidly. I think there's some things that we describe as good and bad because there might be just simply no other way that we can describe them. If someone, and again, we could maybe change the wording on it, more death, less death. No matter what, someone shooting somebody across all cultures is still a crime. I think that's because everyone recognizes that that's unacceptable behavior. And
Yeah, the spectrum is more life, less life, not more death, less death.
more life, less life. Okay, but regardless, I think that's
No, no,
why
no.
like certain things still are like there's like the net negative of somebody who does something terrible and horrific, right? Even across cultures, the word horrific still
Yeah, we don't
has.
like it. We don't like it.
Yeah, we don't like it. It's the same,
That's
like,
not what we want.
I'm
That's
just
not the
saying.
way we want to create in this realm. We don't want that.
Yeah, but even the word bad across different languages, there's still the meaning exists, I think, for a reason, because you ultimately can just say this is bad. This sucks. This is tragic, and someone needs to be held responsible for this. I think this premise it extends beyond one culture for a reason, one country for a reason, because it just is a global premise that someone has done something. It is whatever the word for bad is across whatever language it is. Now this person needs to be held responsible. It's just this continuous, I guess, idea, but I don't think you can necessarily get rid of the word bad. I mean, you can try to influence how people view good and bad, but I don't know if you'll ever get rid of, like, what ultimately is considered something that just maybe there's no other word for it other than bad. I don't like. I feel like that's why bad exists across. I mean, is a global premise. You can translate bad in English, and you'll just get another word in a different language.
Yeah, but translation and languages aren't all the same, and like the way that languages develop is not just like a mechanical process that's like we typed out all of these different things. Like depending on the way that the culture operates, like that's a precursor to the written language, right? And I believe like the language that we have right now in English is like, I don't know when English was developed. I think it came out of like one of the Germanic languages. I think in like the 1400s or something. I could be way off on that. But like heavily influenced by Christianity, and recognizing that like the language also like you think differently. You think differently because like because of the focus of what the language is focusing on, you know? Like this is a classic example of like the people the Eskimos, they have like 14 different words for snow, right? There's that many different kinds of snow, and that's what they're thinking about. But also just about the way that the actual structure of the language works, and like there's certain ways in which our language allows us to like have one of the most incredible legal systems is because it can fracture into so many different things, and like it just changes the way we're able to like grasp um esoteric ideas in like a concrete form. And so like I do believe you can like just say bad and translate over to here, but just because the word exists in these two places, you cannot divorce it from like the original like cultural significance.
Okay, yeah, I get what you mean. That there's I guess even different emotional significance placed, and I guess similarities. I mean, you're never gonna get rid of, I guess, the negative aspect or the tragedy aspect. I mean, there's a reason why everyone, cries at tragedy. It's just one of those things that is um experienced on a global scale. I guess you mean like the way that they think about meaning and interpreting certain things. I can definitely see that. I don't know though how much. I don't know how static it is, um, depending on where you live. I don't know how much like variance there is. I definitely think there are those like concrete, I guess, barriers to a certain extent, right? And separations on ways of thinking of things. I mean, like, there's a reason why they even, I think even people have proven this, even like people who are into like linguistics and things like that, how differently people think about things depending on even the language that they speak, and the roots of that language. Um, but I don't know how, like, as far as like the range, I guess, within like how each person individually interprets something. I don't know how static it is, you know, or how large the range is from somebody who views things in the most strictest, I guess, boundaries, like you were talking, good, bad, the strictest boundaries that can be attributed to Western ideals or, Eastern, wherever part of the country you're talking about, or world, I guess. Yeah, I guess that's the thing that I'm not too sure about.
Yeah, yeah, I don't know. I think it has something to do specifically with how things work culturally, and like this being one of the most fundamental uh premises of um why people came together in such large numbers under the umbrella of Christianity. I believe like the more and more fundamental like the belief structure is, the more and more likely that it will permeate into all different subcultures, right? Like there's different dialects in the US population that are like vastly different, like Nebraska versus Georgia, right? Or Alabama versus New England. Like some of those people, like I'm sure you could get by and like talk to all of them, but it's like vastly different, right? But I believe like it's written on the money, like it's it was caked in to like when they switched over to this alphabet, Christianity was just running full force, right? And I was looking into this, like there's all like the way that the alphabets were even created, like we have like all the Romance languages and like a lot of Europe, like all of our alphabets kind of came from the same area. And I was
Latin.
looking
It,
into
it
this,
all came
like
from Latin, right? And even that was the
uh,
original like
it was like a
language
it
that
was
the
like a
Bible was, I think, printed in.
it ultimately became a fusion of a few different ones. But then you have like the Greek, and the only uh we have like Russia comes from like a Greek alphabet, right? But I was just looking in like the most uh the the countries or populations of people that had like the most expansionist mindset. I had found were Spain, England, Germany. They all had this mindset. And what has the most expansionist mindset? Christianity, right?
Well,
It's it's incredible that it has that built in. Like Russia wants to expand, that's great. And I think what has occurred in the Asian countries is like China has been China, and it's moved like this and like this and like this, right? But I'm just seeing, dude, like England like taking over, like all these different things. I'm just trying to weave together that it's the foundation of our modern alphabet, its inherent ties to Christianity, and the expansionist mindset, which is kind of just like a throwaway idea. I just kind of like some links that I put together.
that's definitely one like aspect, but it's never just one thing. You know, there's multiple. There's even like theories of like I can't remember the name of the guy, but he produced the thesis of like guns, germs, and steel, kind of coming up with this explanation for even why like Europeans had access to, you know, ships, guns, all these other things. Partially the gunpowder came from China, and a lot of people have disputed that as well. I would more so lean towards it being a multitude of different things. It might have to do with Christianity's propensity to expand. That might be one factor. Again, a certain level of like technology. Germs is definitely a factor. I mean, wherever Europeans landed, they just killed people just because of the germs that they transmitted to other populations, and basically it just let them expand into these countries that had no hopes of even being able to fight them on a one-to-one level. I think it's multiple factors that might lead to that, but I mean, it still is the culmination of Christianity spreading, you know, far and wide, even despite all the underlying factors that allowed it to spread, including colonialism, a lot of death. Japan was late to the colonial game, but they did colonize a lot of the Pacific islands, and even went into China and did terrible things during World War II. So I would say that maybe the propensity to expand could be you know, swapped between many different groups, but definitely the result was that, you know, I mean, look at South America, all of the Americas, that was all colonized by Spain or France or England, and therefore
Yeah,
the whole entire
that's what I'm saying.
continent, both
It's
continents are.
wild. It's wild that it's like a specific alphabet had this kind of effect on people's like success in war and expansion.
I don't know if
You
it would
know?
be attributed though. Like that's not the only factor. There's a ton of different factors. We could live in a reality
Yeah,
where the natives were able to actually put up a fight, and you know the diseases that the Europeans brought over didn't actually kill them. Completely different reality just off of that one aspect. They might have not have gone as
sure.
far into South America. There might have been a lot more resistance. It's hard to say. We don't know. Even you give it
We
another
don't
100 years,
we
let's
don't
say
know.
the Europeans never did sail to the Americas. They decided it was too much of a risk, and the natives got the chance to got more time to evolve, and they got to uh, extract more of the resources on the continent. It's hard to say. You know, we don't know what would have happened given different time frames or different
We
realities.
we don't know. We don't know.
But it did
Yeah, but
spread
it's fun. It's
regardless of
fun,
how,
but it's fun to think about, and it's just like just the possibility that the alphabet and the construction of a language allows you to have different uh I mean, it makes sense that the language works differently. Like in Chinese, there's no like conjugation of verbs. It's just like simple addition, right? And then in English, we have like all these modifiers to words, right? I don't even know if they have commas in Chinese. Like you're gonna have a different experience mentally and a different relationship with the world based on the way you think. Like thinking and writing and communicating is so it's just a vital aspect of the human experience. And I think that what even if it's not solely based off of the language, I think that the the language provides like this reductionist mindset that had been talking about, and that allows to um it just allows you to simplify, it allows you to set specific goals, and it also allows you to like uh it just allows you to specify very clearly like, oh, you know, there's gonna be some bad shit we have to do, but it's for the church, or it's for, you know, our liberty. Like we need to do this for this specific reason. And I believe like getting to those very, very fine details, like I think our language may support that more than other ones do. And I think that um yeah, perhaps what we've seen in the modern history has been a result of that.
I could see it, yeah. I think if anything too, I mean,
Mm.
definitely being a contributing factor and even, what we've seen in and even just the landscape of like how things are described on a political level, how maybe even job markets work. I mean, you could extend it to any number of ways that, our country operates. I mean, even it's interesting though, some I would say are very like the United States specifically, and even on a political level, works a lot differently, or has even like there's similarities. I mean, like even with like the rise of like more alt right governments in Europe, and we've seen like kind of similar trends, but also very different ones. Where like I don't know how to describe it. I guess it's just the smaller similarity or differences, the smaller differences between both political systems. But I think uh, one major factor, especially in the U.S., is the tendency of political messaging to be dumbed down to a massive degree. It's interesting because I don't think you see that as much. You'll find it in some countries, but I find that to be a value that is like really easily spotted here for some reason. Um, and it's small things like that that makes me think it's not so static, I guess. Where because of the language roots, you're gonna see copy and paste the same outcomes, I guess, in every single country. That's where I think there's variance, but I definitely think it does, fit into the same box, if that makes
Yeah, I don't
sense.
think it always, I don't always think it predisposes you for like specific outcomes. Yeah, I think it predisposes you to a specific mental attitude that can, through this simple messaging, be easily influenced and controlled. I mean, like that's how like Christianity was so potent. It gets you on board, and then it's like we're doing this because God said or whoever said. Like it's I don't like I think Christians left to their own devices might have incredibly different choices and decisions and outcomes. I believe that it's just like when when the initial mental frame is then acted upon by like a unifying agent is very, very powerful.
See, but I feel like also there's like for instance Christianity, Judaism, and
Islam.
Islam, yeah, they all have the same roots. Um, at least they all go back to the same, like, they're all adaptations of one another. Even people who are Christians, Jewish, or Muslim, they all agree on that factor that they are like related to one another. It makes me wonder because I feel like the same can be said about all three, except Christianity just had the chance to grow the most across different countries. And I would say it's rooted in a multitude of different factors. It could be a way of how the Bible was presented, perhaps. But I also think there's like a bit of chance in there, you know, like a bit of like how different wars were won. Where was the Bible delivered first? I mean, the Romans adopted it basically, and they rejected Judaism. If that was reversed, we could have seen the complete opposite, you know? I think it's things like these that also play a role in how they spread. I mean, the result is the
Yeah,
same. They do.
I agree definitely. I believe the Romans adopting Christianity, it was a political choice, and like one of the central tenets of Christianity is there's no evangelist aspect of it, right? And like the Romans wouldn't necessarily be invited into Judaism, you know?
I mean, it was like a lot more though conservative back then. Even like Christianity. Um, I mean, a joke. This is just a joke, but I would just imagine a Roman emperor being like, "Well, at least I can eat pork now." And like maybe he really liked eating pig, and he was like, "I can't do this Judaism thing. I just can't give up my pork. Love it,
Yeah, and then
fried up."
they didn't want to do the Islam thing because they didn't want to have to like do prayer all the time.
It could even
Just
be
like
little things like that. I mean, if
just
you
once a
imagine.
week, dude, I'm good.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah. It's like I just have to go on Sunday. That's great.
good.
Don't ever talk to me again.
It was just a scheduling thing.
Yeah. He was too busy. He was too busy in the week. Yeah, I mean, it is fascinating though to see like I do always think about how like a small change, like just even something being flopped, could have completely changed the whole entire way that the world functions. Like the butterfly
Yeah,
effect, you know, like one little thing changes and all of a sudden you go in the future and everything is different.
yeah, yeah. That's why we gotta find those caterpillar larvae and protect them.
Yeah, or maybe you have to step on them, like, you know, the like well, actually it could be, well, it could go either way. It's kind of a toss up. You never know. Cuz isn't there that thing where like in this case it was a bad output, but someone like there was like a trail. I don't know why, I don't know where this story came from, but I remember hearing this story and the premise was that you can time travel, but so that you don't step on anything, it like there's this bridge that hovers across the ground because you don't want to step on anything that's off this path because it could change things completely and it could be really bad.
Hmm.
It could be really
Hmm.
good, but it's like a roll of the dice. You don't know. You step on a fern and all of a sudden the world's on fire, right? So like they have these bridges and someone accidentally like kills a butterfly. I don't know how it happens, but a butterfly dies when they go back in time and they come back and it's just dystopian. It's terrible. Everything is bad in the future. And I'm just thinking about that, you know? Except
Yeah,
the reverse. What if you kill the butterfly, you go in time and you're like, man, this is 10 times better. This is crazy. What was that? It's an evil
dude.
butterfly.
That's exactly what I'm saying. We don't know.
Yeah.
Creativity. It's just creativity, man. I mean, like the creativity, like it's easily seen in art, but like sometimes you don't know what the art is until the end, or you fuck up, but that creates brilliance. You know, like it's an ongoing process of trying and then checking back in and saying, "How was that?" and trying and checking back in, I think, um, on an individual level and at a societal level.
Yeah. I do think that does still happen sometimes, though. I mean, you see it even in academics, like, the nature of, like, trying something, it fails, you try again, it half works, you have to try again. I don't know if people recognize it as, like, creativity all the time. I think people tend to think of, like, science as being very rigid, or even academics being very rigid and, not movable. Um, but it's supposed to be. Not that everyone,
Academic
even in the fields, sometimes treat it that way, but even
academia is supposed to be flexible.
yeah. It's supposed to be like even I was thinking about this with economics recently. Um, there's a lot of things about economics that I don't like. I'll be honest. I think like it criticizes itself sometimes too. I'm taking environmental economics, so there's a lot of like criticisms that come from people within economics even. But I guess there's this premise of trying something, seeing how it works out, and then adapting it later. There's a lot of failures. They didn't do that in economics for years. They just, in fact, they screwed over a lot of us in the long term by doing it, even self-admittedly by, people who teach it now. But there is an idea of that's what the premise is, even though it's not always followed. You're supposed to, you know, identify something that could be bad, could be good. Who knows what's going to happen here? Try to apply something to prevent it, or try to steer it in a direction that produces a net benefit to people, or theoretically could be good. If it succeeds, then, great. You keep it. If it doesn't, you go restart again, find out what worked, and dissect it as much as you can. But that even works broadly. I mean, even political science, like policy, it's supposed to operate like that. It just doesn't. It doesn't really always happen.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, yeah, it's just a wild experience. Yeah, and I just rather have optimism. If all of the different jars exist, I'd rather just have optimism.
I feel like
All
I'm the same.
all all things being considered, like why
I
not?
I wish for the same. Definitely, I just can't say that it when I look at things, and if I feel a pessimism inside, I can't just switch it. Like I'm gonna
Dude, but it's
I'm
just
saying the truth, and the truth would be
you're buying
pessimism.
into the propaganda, dude. If you're feeling bad and pessimistic, like
Well, no, I would say that it's natural. It's a natural feeling of like it's not even me saying like this is good, this is bad. It's me looking at things that are happening and saying, "Oh, I don't like that. I don't like it." Like to me, that is less life. I'm looking around as you put it, less life. Not good.
yeah.
And so I'm like it's I don't
So
like I hope I'm
I'd be
wrong.
curious. I'd be curious how much you know about life. I'd be curious about that. About life's processes and
I
how
don't
it
think I know
functions.
everything. I hope nobody would say they know everything. That would be, I think, impossible. From where I'm coming from what I see, from what I've known, from my life experience, right? Education, personal experiences, all the things. I look out and I say, "Oh, maybe next time." And I shut the blinds, and I think it's bad, but I'm hoping, right? I'm still peeking out. It's not like I'm completely shut off. I'm
Just at an instant like that. That's wild,
well,
dude.
no, because I keep peeking. I open up and I go, oh, it's just not looking that good right now. Maybe there's good things happening. I see little sprinkles, and then I'll be like, oh well, it's not looking that good from my perspective.
That's wild,
Admittedly, I
dude.
could be wrong. Who knows what could happen in the future? Things change. But I'm not
Yeah.
gonna look outside and like if I get that feeling, that natural feeling that comes across me, and even just from observation and from my perspective, I'm not gonna lie to myself and say it's good. You know, I guess I can't do that. It feels like I'm not gonna let it
Yeah,
drag me
I guess
down. I'm not gonna like
I guess
let it ruin my
I guess
life or
when
anything.
I guess when you're opening the curtains and you look outside, if you see a painting instead of a movie, your your brain is confused because things are constantly moving. It's like a life is like a process, dude. It's like moving. So like you can't even take a snapshot of life because as soon as you take like it's a Polaroid picture and it prints out, all of a sudden what's on here is different than what's occurring in life, you know? Like a new moment just happened right now. And life is different right now than it was when I said last time a thing is just happening right now. Right? It's ongoing. There's no status of life besides the fact that it's ongoing.
I see. I agree with you, but here's an example. This is a little bit of a silly example, but
Okay.
I look outside and I'm seeing smoke. Right now, maybe I'll
Is it
go.
moving?
I'll try to be optimistic. Yeah, the smoke is moving, and that said that in my mind, I'm trying to be optimistic. I'm not always a pessimistic person. I'm like barbecue, right? Barbecue, probably grilling up some good meats there. I start hearing screaming, like it's like terrible screams, right? And it starts to smell bad too. And I'm, well, I really hope that's a barbecue. I wish it was, but I'm my bets are on something bad is happening. But it just in my brain. This is the evidence that I've collected. I'm not saying I'm 100% certain, but if I had to make an estimation, 80% murder is grilling up human beings, and I'm not going over there. And maybe it's not even that bad. Maybe someone's house is on fire and someone's going, "Oh my God," outside of the house. No one's died. But my scenarios that I've concocted in my mind say, okay, this is a high likelihood it's bad. Small likelihood it's good right now. Maybe things will change. Maybe I'll hear like the kids laughing and like, the smoke stops and they're like, "Hey, Jesse, come over for some barbecue." And I'm like, "Oh shit. Oh man, I can't believe that the small fraction that I thought was going to be good happened." But my estimation, it's just my in the moment estimation. It's evolving. It's not static. I'm not always like this, but that is like sometimes I'm going to look outside and it's not going to be a happy prediction. It's just, I can't always be optimistic. And maybe it's to say can't. Maybe I shouldn't say can't. That's just not, I don't think, how I operate because I see sometimes there's a bad week. Sometimes there's a bad 4 years. Sometimes there's a bad 8 years, 12 years. You don't know, and there's good within there too. But consensus, I'm just making estimations, I don't think I'm right. I think things change and evolve. I don't know if I'm certain, but you hear the screaming, you hear the smoke. It's just my brain makes the bad prediction on that, I guess.
Yeah, so that's what you're putting in the jar, and then the anthropologists are going to see that. And yeah, it's not even like you that's like not everybody's reaction naturally to seeing smoke and hearing screaming, right? Like some people's reaction isn't to close the blinds, it's like to go out and help. If they become a firefighter, they work in social services, and like
Well, I
their
didn't mean.
creativity.
Now I feel bad. I didn't mean that. I'd close the blinds on that instance. Maybe I'd go around the corner and then if I heard like someone laughing, vroom, vroom, chainsaw, I'm like, oh shit, I should probably call the police. This is bad. And then the police show up and they're like, "You idiot! They were just having a haunted house party, right?" But it's all about my current perspective, or maybe they're right, and then the cops die, and now I'm like, "Oh my God, this man is crazy. This like no one can stop this chainsaw murderer
Yeah, but
guy who
it's just
lights fires."
it's just like what is happening and what are you going to do about it? That's just what it is.
What if you come to the conclusion, and I mean this is a depressing conclusion, but I think a lot of people come to this conclusion. I don't think I'm the only one. I've heard people say it where they say, "What can I do? I'm just one person. I'm checking out." And I think a lot of people do that. I don't necessarily check out, but I think to myself sometimes I'm like, what do I have the time available to do? And there's like activist groups and stuff. I've considered depending on who I'm in a job search right now a little bit, but there's like an activist group, and they were looking, I think, for people. I can't remember what it was. I can't remember the name. ACU or something like that. They do a lot of activism though, out in LA, and they were looking for people to hire. And so you can do good things. I'm not saying you can't. All I'm saying is that you only have so much time in your life, right? You're only one
Yeah.
person. I think as a collective, I think that's the only way change ever happens. Just from what I've seen, from what I've studied, is that we only can move things as a collective. It's more powerful, it's more unifying, and
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
generally stands up to power a little bit better. But sometimes there's a little pessimism where I'm like, I'm one person. I don't think things are going to be going in the right direction for a little while. We just got to hold on, you know? And I guess
Yeah.
that's all
So
I can say.
I'm gonna have to get going here in a second, but I want to say that just because you hear the smoke and the screaming, like, doesn't mean you have to. What you have to do is related to that. It just
Yeah.
means you see it and like you're like, oh, I'm just gonna do this. There seems to be my individuality is not going to be useful in this scenario. I'm going to go work on something I'm passionate about that might help me be successful in the future.
I mean, if I can't do anything about it, I I see the kids burning in the house now, and now it's certain that this is what's happening. I can't do anything about it, and I'm not there anymore. Let's say that, like, for some reason, I don't know what kind of fucked up world this is that I'm like, I'm inventing your glass and like all this barbed wire and stuff, and I'm like, I can't get over. I can't do anything about this, and I'm like, this sucks. And then it's like, you have to get to work. You're gonna lose your house if you don't go to work. I'm like, what? Oh, that's right. I need to survive, and so I go to work. I'm still gonna feel bad about it. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not gonna move on and just be like, well, and then like kind of like da da, and like a happy theme song plays. I'm gonna be like, this is fucked up. I might be thinking about this for the next hour. How fucked up this is. I got to get to work. I got to live my life. I got to survive. I got to do things that I enjoy. You know, I'm gonna get a sandwich because I'm happy to have this sandwich. I'm excited about this sandwich. But I'm not gonna just disregard it. It's gonna have an impact on me.
You got to work on the creative aspect, man. Believing in possibilities, believing in creativity, man. It's so powerful.
I can believe in that, but I think at the same time, there's gonna be certain things that I learn about, and I'm gonna say this is sad. This is making me feel bad, and that's okay. I think there is a certain like, or not. I don't know. I don't even know if I would describe it as feeling okay. Sometimes it just is upsetting, and I'm like, this sucks. Sometimes you'll just be like, this really sucks. This is like the worst, and then you realize there's nothing you can do, and you just go, well, guess I got to get to work. I guess it's, you know, the timer went off, you know, and so I don't know. I don't know.
All right, shout out to Oprah, everybody.
Shout out to, that's right. We didn't even talk about Oprah and the
That's fine.
we're a little bit more of a, I guess, serious episode today.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, I kind of want to show this to my dad.
Okay, yeah. It's a podcast for everyone, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, we're expanding our demographic to all ages, including not except children. That's it. If you're above the age of
17?
I think 18 is 18. What's the age for like things that are like mature topics? What's like the rating? I don't know if PG-13 applies.
Yeah, I don't know, dude.
Whatever the rating is, whatever the normal rating is, that's what that's what this show is.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. It always takes me a little while to stop. Oh, Nope, I stopped the recording. Now we'll stop the stream. In 3, 2, 1. Goodbye.